Okay, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you might be joining us right now. This is an exclusive webinar hosted by Hotelogix, Logic, HMS Thailand, and Vertical Booking. We are sharing with you our thoughts and ideas on a topic that I think is close to everyone's heart, near and dear to our daily lives in hotel operations and hotel revenue management. That topic is taking a calculated approach towards pricing your rooms better. I don't think there's a single hotelier in each market that doesn't have a point of view or a preferred approach towards pricing. So this is our topic for today. We have in my opinion at least, an expert panel of panelists, experts in this field. So let's go from right to left in opposite order of appearance. We have Siva from Hotelogix. Siva is Senior VP of Enterprise Business at Hotelogix. Good morning, Siva. Welcome. Then we have Fabian Bartnick.
Good morning, everybody.
Fabian, Vice President of Asia Pacific and International Business. The title was too long. I had to cut it. Sorry, Fabian. You're VP. Yeah, you're VP at Logic.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
welcome. I think it's afternoon for you in Singapore right now. Is that
Absolutely.
right?
3 o'clock.
Okay. And last but not least, Bas van Straten from HMS Thailand. Hi, Bas. How are you? Welcome. You're joining us right now from sunny Phuket. Yeah.
Sunny Phuket it is. Warm 2 o'clock here. So happy to get started.
Very nice. Very nice. Well, 7 a.m. here in the UK. Dark outside, cold outside. But it's great through the magic of technology. We've all been joined here together. So whether you're watching us live right now on the webinar, or apparently we're on Facebook as well, or on recording later on in your day, welcome. Very nice to have you here. We will start with Bas. Bas will take us through his perspective on pricing and revenue management, and then Fabian, Siva, and then we'll open up the floor for questions from yourselves. I've got a few questions prepared, some questions that will be unprepared, but let's begin with Bas.
Okay, thank you, Eric, and good morning or afternoon to all you on this webinar. What we see, we work as a company towards independent hotels, and a lot of independent hotels would benchmark themselves, would set targets towards what they believe they can do better on previous years. And we would like to challenge hoteliers and revenue managers alike to move to a more wider view and also to your competitive position. So Eric, if you could move to that next slide. So there's a few key performance indicators that we're using in today's revenue management. And most of these are very centric towards what the market is about. Average rate index, as so many of you might have heard about, will help you to determine where's your position in your ADR compared to the rest of your market. But same thing could be seen from the market penetration index, which is more an occupancy-based kind of differentiator to see how well you're scoring within your own market. Last but not least, RevPAR is absolutely the number one indicator used today, although questions are raised, is that still something for the future? But the RevPAR index will give you an indication where you are on your market. But who is your market? And sometimes you're struggling yourself between where would you see yourself competing with. And I think that determines very much on where you would like to see yourself compared to others. For this, I prepared another slide here where I'm trying to challenge hoteliers as well to move more to a plotting of your competitors realistically. Step away from looking at the 4-star, 5-star hotels in your area, the amount of keys or the kind of price range, but challenge yourself to be more looking at your customer. What's your customer willing to pay for your product, and what are they paying for your competitor, and how do you rank review-wise compared to your other competitors? And you might be surprised that if you do this analysis yourself, you will have a different approach about where you actually see who truly your competitors are, and maybe also you're reviewing yourself where you should be on your ARI or MPI or RGI. So I think the challenge here is to step out of the comfort zone, look at your competition from a different way. If we look at the next slide, Eric, the rate structure itself is determining yourself to price yourself right. So once we're looking at our competitive set differently, and we bring him into actually very easy to read matrices and I took this sample from Booking Suite, where you see yourself into a differentiator between your competitors. And with the demand query there, you can see also what some opportunities. So along the grid, so this is a snapshot of a 30 days window for November, you can see that there are peaks in your demands and weaknesses. And I think looking at your objective to drive a certain index, you will see also the opportunities in the demand curves where you can price yourself slightly stronger during a certain point of time if your own in-house data allows you to. Moving to the next slide, Eric. So where we might see another enhancing tool, and the PMS systems, and I think Siva will elaborate on that a bit later, as well as Fabian, on booking windows and booking pace. But again, today's information available to us, it's from every platform, every source. And again, I'm using here a Booking.com sample, is where you again can relate to your past performances. So we're seeing here a bit of a booking window for a property and the comparison with last year. And you do see that you might, well, pick up the trend from a very last minute perspective, and you have your 30 days window doing quite well, but there's still opportunities out there in that in-between capture rate, 2 to 7 days, where you might do it worse than last year. And also there, I think hoteliers could focus more on to see where can I be stronger. Looking at your competitive pricing, look at your competitors, but I showed you in the previous slide. And then again, look at your booking window to see what kind of changes you can make yourself drive into better revenue. Eric, back to you.
Thank you, Bess. Thank you very much. Now, Fabian, the floor is yours, my friend.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Click. So I represent Logic, and we are a new generation revenue management system. Now, when we talk with people across the globe, we get hit with amounts of, oh, what about big data? Don't we need to have all the data that is out there in the world? Give me more data, give me less data. What a lot of people fail to understand is that actually out of that 100% of data available, really about 10% of that data is really interesting for you. So something that you can use in the decision-making process. And when we talk about data, you hear a lot of times the different V's of data, if you want to call it so far. And the only thing you really need to keep in mind is, okay, volume-wise, what do I actually mean by big data? Is an Excel sheet of 100 megabyte big, or is 10 megabyte big, or is gigabytes big? The second part is really about the velocity of data, or the speed. So for us in technology, Bas, for Eric, for Shiva, and for all of you, it becomes important because when we talk real time, what do we mean by real time? Or do we really mean just a batch upload on a daily basis or 3 times? And that hinders us sometimes in the decision-making process or on the way we can approach our business. The last one is then variety, and that really just means for us taking in different data sources from a social perspective, from a video perspective, from a picture and a text perspective to make better decisions. So your core in the decision making is really about turning noise into knowledge. Now, thanks to the American elections, Twitter and so on and so forth, you could argue that veracity has actually become the biggest part in data overall, because now we're also questioning, is the data that I'm actually getting reliable? Is it correct? Is what I see on the books really on the books? Is what I see from a rate perspective out there really true, so that I'm not making decisions on wrong data, therefore making a decision out of the 90% that is inaccurate versus the 10% that I really require. Click, please. Now, this is now a question of truth. And we really need to understand, where are we in our maturity? Everybody wants to have a Ferrari. If I give the Ferrari to my 2.5-year-old, that Ferrari won't last long. Not that he will drive it, he will just trash the inside of the Ferrari. right? So much better to give him a little push bike or a scooter. For us, it's no difference. We have data on the left, and there's a lot of data out there. And then there's action all the way on the right. And somewhere in between, there's a human element and a technology element, or in this example, an analysis component. And somewhere after that is a decision. And you heard a lot about artificial intelligence, machine learning, so on and so forth. But it doesn't really help you if you're still at a stage trying to understand what actually happened, before you move on to like, why does it actually happen? And those stages are not, let's say it, 100% all the time. So you can be at certain points freely flowing between certain stages. Yet when you come into a predictive or prescriptive part, this is really when you can have conversations about total revenue management, about decision automation, about trusting the technology to take over a human's work, so to speak. Next, please. Now, putting those two things, data, the truth of it, the volume of it, the speed of it, together with what I mentioned about the maturity of where you are, brings us to your reality. Now, we all have a bar structure somehow. So, Eric, click. Most hotels will have a bar structure that looks somewhere like this. We have a bar, then we have a value package, then we have a breakfast. Normally those sit on top of bar. Then we have promotions and saver rates, so to speak, advanced purchase, which are generally for prepayment. One, most of the time a discount. The other one, most of the time an add-on as far as a cash percentage. Now, if we then click, we can see that by changing bar, I'm not only changing bar, I've now changed my value, my breakfast, my promotion, my saver, but I've equally moved into my dynamic wholesale and my dynamic corporates, changing at the same time. Now, you might say, okay, forget the corporate, but how many of you out there are now faced with giving two rates to your offline wholesalers? They're asking you for a static and they're asking you for a dynamic rate. And we're at the moment in a transition period where the offline giants, GTA, Hotelbed, so on and so forth, really want to move from a static to a dynamic model. And that also means that you are actually not in control anymore, because they are looking at it from a, hey, those guys are pricing up. Let me take the static rate because I can increase my margin. Versus they're pricing down. I now switch over to the dynamic model and therefore keep my margin. Now, unfortunately, this is something that you need to be aware of when changing your bar rates. Now, if we move over then, we're going into our favorite territory of OTAs. And again, generally, those guys are mirroring what you have on your own website. And I put desktop here on purpose, and we see that in a second why. What they already have on top of it is that they have a travel agent license. And that means they can package room and flight for a discount so that they can sell something that you cannot. If you're trying to apply for a travel agency license, good luck. I worked for Tune Hotels. We owned an airline, and I was still not able to sell airline tickets on my hotel website, unfortunately. So now we're coming to the real cool part. So we now move into closed user group. Closed user group back in the day was 50 things to fill out. Now it takes a first name, last name, email, and happy days. You're one of the 120 million privileged members that now get a 10% discount. So it opens doors to geo-fenced locations. So that really just means if you're from China or if you're from Thailand, you get a different rate than somebody from Australia or Singapore. Mobile, still a wonderful definition in the industry. What is mobile actually? Is my laptop considered mobile, or do I actually mean the app? Call your market managers. You'll be interesting to see what you get back. And then we're moving over to private sale. And each of those steps generally comes with a, can you please give me a discount of 10, 5, or 10%? And that all in an era where we consider mobile to be the king. Now, this is where it becomes really interesting. So you see that I have on the top the desktop. Now, most of your agreements, if you look at your agreements, they're based rate parity on desktop. Now, If you move out of the desktop environment, you need to clearly check if you're actually still having a rate parity agreement covered as part of your contract. If your contract is old, chances are it's not. Now, let's look at the promotion part. Now, some OTAs came into Asia a bit later than others. And what happened was that in order to actually gain a market share, they introduced at the bottom of right a 24-hour hold. Now, Booking.com just sent out an email and said, you got to opt out. Expedia at least asked you to opt in, or didn't even ask, but sent you an email saying you are now opted in. And what happens is that they have taken your prepaid rate and turned them actually in bar rates because they are allowing their guests a 24-hour cancellation. That doesn't sit well with hotels these days. Equally, other OTAs that you might not be working with are buying from either the wholesalers or buying from another OTA to put it through as a private sale, and therefore are able to sell your hotels. For you, that would mean that if I, for example, go on Traveloka and you have not contracted Traveloka, you will receive that booking via Hotelbeds. Funny story will come in when both Hotelbeds and Traveloka will knock on your door and both claim the same amount of statistics. Now, Eric already clicked on the geofence promotion. Now here you have to be a bit wary. There are some out there, some OTAs that use it as closed user point of sale. So that just means .com.au, you all of a sudden get any kind of promotion for the Australians, right? Very good when you're going to Bali. The other OTAs do that by IP address. So imagine you have to go download an IP address mimicker so that you can log into a VPN to then fake an IP from a different country. By then you deserve 10%, guaranteed. Now, the next part is that let's say I do a promotion and say, hey, Shiva, you are OTA number 1. How about I give you 10% from India? Shiva says, fantastic, let me help you. 2 days later, I possibly get a phone call from another OTA asking me why I am not giving them another 10% in a closed user group environment, because that OTA is purchasing inventory from Shiva and yet realizes that are not being treated equal. Favorite nation. Unfortunately, if you click once more, if you then still take all of those items out, somebody will still buy some offline inventory, put it through as a private sale, and therefore, again, hurting your bottom line. Now, those are complexities that you need to understand when you make that one little rate change from 1,100 to 1,200.
Thank you, Fabian. Very, very interesting indeed. A lot of complexity and a lot of dynamics in play in the market today. Shiva, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone. I am Shiva from Hotelogix. We are a cloud-based property management system. Eric, can we go on to the slide? So I think Bas spoke about the booking window being lesser, and Fabian spoke about mobile and data being data required in real time, right? So being a PMS company, we are the base where, all data comes to the PMS first. So there has to be an option to capture the data. The data has to be accurate. That means the front office staff, when they enter it, has to be accurate, or nowadays it comes directly from the channel manager. So Eric has got a channel manager of their own or a booking engine of their own. So when the data is entered there, it on a two-way integration, the PMS should have the ability to pick up the data and to make sure that it is accurate and without any mistakes. So the data comes to the PMS, and the data has to be given to the revenue management company like Logic or to Bas, who runs a revenue management service. It has to go to them on a real-time basis when they need it, right? We spoke about the mobile changing the booking window. So the booking window from, say, 1 month has come down to 2 days, 1 day, or depending upon the location of the hotel. Now that data has to be available at any moment of time when somebody like Bas wants to do a entry. So being on cloud, that has changed a lot of things. The data availability or the access to the PMS has become much more easier. Also, the fact that it is integrated with a lot of things has made it possible that the PMS can provide the data, and it has changed across the last few years that the PMS are much more capable. But the main thing is that the PMS needs to have the capability and strength to do all this seamlessly. Can you go to the next slide? There's a lot of data requirements which the PMS needs right now, so that it can pass on the information to a revenue manager or to a revenue management system, right? What is the booking pace, what is the length of stay, what is the occupancy details, segment-wise and source-wise data. All of this input actually comes either manually or again through an integrated channel manager. So a booking comes from a corporate, he automatically picks up the segmentation, right? You don't have to key it in. So the PMS needs to have the capability to input all these details and pass it on to a system so that the revenue manager can make an accurate decision on the price. Next slide. If you look at it, Eric and Bas and Fabian spoke about different pricings, especially Fabian who on bar and derivatives of bar, right? A lot of discounting on the bar, corporate rate links to bar. All this information comes from systems or from manual inputs, and this needs to be incorporated into the PMS so that it can get distributed seamlessly. So once the pricing decision is taken, that price has to be distributed and across various channels, so that all of there is rate parity and stuff like that, and all of these prices are seamlessly distributed across the various different channels. I think that's it from him.
Thank you, Siva. Thank you, Bas and Fabian. So it's question time now. Those of you who are joining us now live, please feel free to use your tools there. I think there's a Q&A button or a chat button. Please feel free to ask your questions as they occur. Happy to ask those questions to the panelists. I've got some questions to get the ball rolling. I want to start with Fabian. Fabian, you've got a lot of experience in RM. You've got, let's say, expertise where you can make an impact on a hotel's revenue using your brain in a spreadsheet. People with your skill set, people with experience in how to optimally price and manage their property from a revenue management perspective, or let's say you specifically, what kind of an impact would someone like you have on a property? And then how much impact would someone like you plus technology, let's say you plus logic, have on that same property? What's the difference and why?
Wow, that's not just one question. That's how many hours do we have?
Yes, go for it.
Okay. I don't want to say it depends, but it really depends. First of all, let's have a look at the baseline, right? And let's agree, or let's acknowledge that there's different hotels out there. There is hotels out there that have small rooms, 10, 15, 20 rooms, where you could question the return on investment taking a full-blown superstar revenue manager on board, right? Versus possibly a cheaper option like outsourcing it, because you don't need a 24-hour, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, real-time input. Let's say your market doesn't even want that. But let's go to the other end, big box hotels, total revenue management, really strong transient and business demand, high occupancies. There you will see the biggest impact from a short-term and a long-term perspective. So while you not only have to look at the sizes or the dynamics within the hotel, you also need to look at it from a short-term versus a long-term perspective. A lot of times when you come in short-term, chances are that you have negotiated rates already for the next 12 to 18 months. Those are very hard to get out of. Those are very hard to have discussions about. Those are things that you need to work around until you can make an impact. The short term, you would generally go in, establish a baseline, very much follow what Bas mentioned earlier, to understand your competition, your market, your overall data spectrum, and we call it an EDA in the data world. So it's an exploratory data analysis. where you go in, you look at the data from all angles, turn it upside down to then say, okay, what are my low-hanging fruits at this point in time where I can make more money? Again, this more money depends if I have 1,000 bedroom versus 100 bedroom versus a 10 bedroom, what those differences mean. It equally, with more skill sets, come more areas of responsibility. So you're looking at conference and events, you can look at food and beverage, you can look at spa revenue. Those are generally the most common ones talked about. And we had a discussion the other week with Marina Bay Sands in Singapore, and they have about 2,500 something hotels. And they find it incredibly difficult to actually find good people for conference and events from running a large operation. So even if you have the skill set in the rooms part, you might not have that for other areas that your business requires. So it's, Eric, coming back to the point, it's very hard to put a percentage on it. A good revenue manager will pay for themselves in the long run. They might not pay for themselves in the next months or two, but in the long run they will. Equally, some hotels might just require a cluster approach or an outsourcing approach, because what they really need from a market perspective, hotel diversity perspective, is a coming in and doing it a couple of times a day, or even once a day, or even a couple of times a week. Now, technology can be a great supporter, in the sense of, let's say you're outsourcing and you have a couple of hotels, you're an owner, you have 6, 7 hotels, but you don't want to outsource to 7 different people. Technology will allow one person to handle all of those hotels through a full PMS integration, through a CRS integration, through real-time data, to make the decisions wherever and whenever they are. And there are light systems out there, which we consider pricing systems. And then there's full-blown revenue management systems. The full-blown revenue management system, generally the industry is in agreement that it gives about 3 to 5% increase on a yearly basis across all revenue lines. And a recent study that will be published in December by eHotelier and ourselves will show that approximately 60-70% of all people who have an RMS see it as extremely valuable in driving their business, with the reminder saying it is very helpful. So there was no negativity of my RMS doesn't work. It was all in the top tier that if I use technology, I can get that icing on the top. I can get that cherry on the top. And that's our how do you call that? Involvement in the industry with vendors like yourself, with somebody like Shiver, to make sure that we can give a solution that works and doesn't break for the hotels, so that they and someone like Bas can make better decisions on behalf of their clients or as clients themselves.
Okay, thank you. If you had to just give me a quick percentage, you with spreadsheet, you with technology, what's the difference?
It depends. I've driven 300% in a hotel, and I've equally only driven 2% in a hotel. It really comes down.
Eric,
that's exactly what I was looking for, is that it is dynamic. There's no hard and fast rules. We have different types of properties at different, let's say, stages of maturity. So yeah, you can walk in and it's like, wow, look at all the low-hanging fruit. I can, significantly make an impact right away just by changing strategy. Siva, did you have a question?
Yeah, see, as a PMS vendor, we are seeing increased demand from hotels for revenue management systems, right? And it is not from large hotels, it is from the mid-segment market, where 50 room, 60 room hotels, and especially it seems to be coming because of the booking window being much lower, right? Taking a decision has become difficult, and the decision has to be mostly last minute, right? You might have to take multiple decisions a day. And we are seeing that increased demand coming from one of the things I think as adoption has not increased, but the demand is there, right? And one of the reasons seems to be that a lot of integrations, right? Revenue management systems are not integrated to a lot of people. That seems to be an issue with adoption.
Fully agree. Fully agree. I think we as an industry have not done a really good job at building so many different interfaces and becoming really complex instead of creating a one seamless environment. But then again, I can argue that we have been one of the first to build a system that can purely work on market dynamics. Therefore, possibly not requiring PMS data, even though PMS data gives a certain extra flavor to it. But you're absolutely right. The interfaces and therefore the adoption, you could argue some form of education, might still require some help, possibly through blockchain.
Yeah, I think we could do a webinar specifically on integrations, and we should. Also keep this on track in terms of pricing and RM. Now, question for Bas, if Bas is still there.
Absolutely, yeah.
Oh, cool. The question is, in your slide, you talked about knowing your competitors, and also, more importantly, not who you perceive your competitors to be, but who your potential customer, how they see the competitive market. Now, my question is, from a hotel's perspective, is it only other hotels that are your competitors, or are the OTAs your competitors? And I'm speaking specifically with MetaSearch. I know you have some experience in this.
Well, I mean, the market is in every place huge and crowded. And I mean, if I'm zooming into where I'm based here in Thailand, specifically in the south, there's a lot of supply when it comes to hotels. So in a way, you could say, yes, the competition is not just those very few hotels you're looking at, it's the entire market space. But if we need to price ourselves towards that, I think that it becomes very complex. And I think there are even systems not really able to compete with that. So making a layer or two layers or a couple of them to filter out your true competitors is start to get you a better of a landscape there. But as you mentioned, meta search being a big component in there, and we can also see that Google is taking quite a strong run on that. Wherever people start to search, it would be either Google or an OTA nowadays. The OTAs are the search engines for travel, and Google trying to catch up with that. So if you look at Google or the OTAs, then you see that the transparency of your pricing, the transparency of your product nowadays, combination with reviews, is at a glance for any customer who's going online and can see thousands of options depending which marketplace you're in. So absolutely, you'll see there a wider concept. I think still the challenge of a revenue manager is to filter out which is truly your competitor and who your customer deems to feel as a competitor. We've done some tests with hotels here on asking the guest meals a questionnaire directly if they would compare us, that particular hotel, with another hotel in that particular market. And I think you'll be very surprised what kind of information comes back, because most of the times you might be wrong. Most of the times they make a value assessment in a different area, but somehow your reputation has brought them to you. So there are always different criteria. And I think for any of the revenue managers out there or e-commerce managers out there, you'll see the same thing if you go into back offices of your OTA vendors there, that within that market space that they show on to who or which OTA or to which hotel you've lost your bookings, you sometimes see their hotels popping up that you never would consider as a valued competitor, but the market seemed to price itself. So that's why I look at the market perspective to say, there's where you need to see where people value it. And within your competitive landscape and within your meta search market, try to beat them. Try to stay ahead of those. You can't beat everybody. That's too complex.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, we've got plenty of questions from our attendees. Let me start with the first one. Muhammad Azam starts by saying, Fabian talked about how important market data like bar and prices to get distributed. Bas talked about metrics with internal hotel data compared to market data. Question, how important is real market demand data, occupancy, for example, in the market, irrespective of the hotel's own occupancy or bar? This is for whoever wants to take this question.
Okay, let me try to jump in here. We have taken our approach to the extent, so we always thought about an outside-in approach. So talking about, if you truly want to understand your own demand drivers, you got to understand the market dynamics or the neighborhood dynamics. Now, if you think about that, I would actually argue in about 85 to 90% of the cases that statement holds true. And if we look at it logically, it generally means if my area or my market is full, I'm generally full, right? Regardless if I pace as quickly as the market or not, if the market finishes packed, I'm generally packed. Now, in 20 or 15 or 10% of the cases, that might be different because my competitor might have a group or something, or I have something in there that will distort the balance. But it's still a question of, is the endpoint going to be the same that the market and myself are going to be in relative tandem? If I'm always 70%, the market is always 70%, then we're working hand in hand. All of a sudden something happens around the corner and we might bump ourselves up to 80% versus the market still being at 70%. So again, in about 90% of the cases, I would say that holds true. The other 10% is where your PMS data and your market data combined will give you the full flavor.
And Bas, what's your experience there with, let's say, the tech versus non-tech approach to revenue management consultancy and the kind of data you rely on to improve results for your hotel clients?
Right. Well, we've seen a very nice sample in the market a bit up north in Thailand, where we always believed to be in the right direction. We were very ADR driven in our approach. And somehow it was aligned with our competitive set data. So when we look at the outside markets, we getting our monthly statistics aligned, and we'd say we're doing quite well, but we write a little bit off on our ADR, but we can compete well. So if you're looking yourself, ranking yourself in the top 6 of hotels, where are you confident with? Is it your first position? Are you the market leader in your comp set, or you take more an in-between approach to be number 3, or do you want to be the last in the pack? And the same approach you can do again and again when you're looking at an occupancy perspective or the ADR or RevPAR. Ultimately, as we all know, RevPAR is a product of occupancy and ADR. And we've made quite a turn there to be more, as we say, the aggressor in the market. Let's drive ADR complete low and to see what is the maximum occupancy we can retrieve from the market. Are we able to pull it away from our competitors? Are we seeing that our competitors will struggle more? So if we wouldn't have that data from the outside market, we couldn't make such decisions because we couldn't really measure what the impact was. It was also maybe a bit more riskier because looking at your own data in your PMS, at your occupancy level and your ADR level, you might not be able to make that right decision. So I do think that besides what systems deliver you, I shared with Fabian as well previously, like it would be great to have real market data, what is achieved in the market as a part of a revenue management structure, but that's still something you're doing manually or through channels like STR to collect that competitive data to see where do you see the opportunities for you in your marketplace to make a change. And sometimes, as I mentioned this example, taking a very different detour can have some very extreme results.
Thank you. I have a question from one of our attendees, anonymous. I love those anonymous attendees. How about a villa with limited inventory, for example, only 7 bedrooms? Should we compete and see what the rates are on the OTAs and other big chain hotels around our villa property who also offer villas? So the question is, small villa, 7 rooms, competing in a destination where a big chain has some villa product. Who wants to take this one?
I can comment on that.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, we do come across the similar kind of decisions here in South Thailand, whereas there's a lot of, I would say, private inventory on the market, single villas being at 4, 5, or 7 bedrooms large. And I think you need to understand that you're playing a different market, that you might reach a different buyer, and you might have different source markets. And typically, the kind of clientele that buys, that we have experienced here, looks to a more trustworthy kind of concierge service approach. So they buy differently. They're looking for different services to spice up that market. So if you compete at one-off with a hotel next to you, which maybe have 12 or 20 private villas, they have a different service, they have different sales channels, and they might not directly having a 7-bedroom configuration. And I think that's where you need to find ways to match product to product if you can as much in your market.
Thank you. We have another question. Oh, sorry, Fabian, did you want to chip in?
Yeah, I wanted to jump in there. Essentially, I think it's from Chris. The amount of bedrooms is irrelevant, because what you want to optimize is your size of your property or how many rooms you have. And following on from Bas says, there's really, it's a question about marketing and product differentiation at the end of the day. If you compare to the chains or to other villas, I remember doing business in Croatia, and we compared ourselves to Turkey, because that's where the real comp set or secondary comp set lays. Now, if you want to differentiate yourself from your competition, you need to understand, first of all, what makes me different, or what am I charging for? And the second thing is, how much am I charging for? And it's easily done for you by looking at my different offerings across my 7 villas versus who else in the market is actually offering this kind of service, plus the add-ons that Bas mentioned. And then the people who book you, ask them, who did they look at when they made that decision? They might not have looked actually at somebody close surrounding you, but a similar product in a different part of the island or the country. And therefore, you were part of that decision-making process, but only came into the picture once the destination had been settled. And you could have very well been the driver for the destination to win.
Understood. Thank you. We have another question from Sandeep. Sandeep asks, could you please help us understand how revenue management systems are accounting for deep discounting run by OTAs in some regional markets? Who wants this one?
Well, I'm the only RMS provider here.
Go for it.
Let me try and take that. So deep discounting is unfortunately a big problem in the industry. Fortunately for us, it generally sits in closed user groups. So essentially in most hotels, the split is roughly 50-50 between closed users and non-closed users. Now, the way the RMS would take that into consideration is that segment, or whatever you want to call that, channel, segment, rate plan, wherever you map that into the PMS, filters through into the RMS, and then the RMS, you will be able to decide, do I want this to be part of the optimization or not, right? Because again,
yieldable versus non-yieldable, yeah?
Yeah, yieldable versus non-yieldable, yieldable, but I don't really interest because I don't want to fight in that kind of arena. Plus, every time they take a cheap booking means if you're full anyhow, means your competitor can't take a higher rated booking. So again, you're having a question of, am I going to be full or am I not going to be full? Because in a full scenario, it's much easier. You can say, let the cheap guys go somewhere else, and I'll wait for the market to be fuller so I can get the cream on the top without actually changing my rate. In a situation where you all of a sudden have a non-peak demand, so i.e. you're not going to be full, it's really a strategic question if you want to go in there or if you don't. But the RMSs, you can use it or not use it. There's ability to put that on in the system. And I challenge you to go back to your revenue management providers and say, hey, how would my business look if you take that into consideration? How would it look if I don't?
Okay, thank you.
Eric, Fabian, I think this question Sandeep's question is very specific to India, right? So here OTAs are providing 30%, 40% off on the bar, but the hotel gets paid full, right? The discounting is done by the OTA and the hotel gets the full money. So I don't see how the rate should not get affected actually by the OTAs discounting. They are taking the bar and then giving a 30% off on it.
Yeah, that's
and they pay the hotel the full money, right?
That's a good question, Shiva. Is it actually a discounting where they do it as a cost of acquisition, which we see a lot in China happening, where they OTA?
It's a cost of acquisition by the OTA. The hotel is paid the full money.
The problem is that your value will be diminished, and that scenario from you as a hotel. But you could argue at the end of the day, if I'm not full, I still made my money. But you're right. It's equally when I ran the hotels in Delhi, as you well remember, it's the same thing. What you have out there, there was still a phone call to say, can you give it cheaper? Right? Or can you give me another discount? Even at check-in, can I have another discount? So those are all dynamics that over time will give you a trend, and based on the trend, you can make decisions. One-offs are very difficult in statistical terms to deal with. The moment you have a sequence of events, you're much more able to predict what the future outcome is and how it really impacts your business.
Siva, are we talking about all the OTAs or Goey Bibo, anyone specific, or everybody?
So to answer Sandeep, I think, it's Goey Bibo and Make My Trip, and all of them are giving, right? In India, everybody is giving a discount right now. The hotel gets paid the money. So the bar, I don't see the bar changing, right? So depending upon demand, you will price yourself. Whether the OTA gives a discount or doesn't give a discount, I don't see how it affects the bar.
That's not necessarily a bad thing, right? If it's a transient, unqualified visitor, one-time visitor, and the OTA is eating into their margin or making a loss to sell your product at the price you've set. Not necessarily a bad thing. I understand what you're saying, Fabian, about value, but I haven't seen that outside of the example Siva gave. But I don't think it's too bad, right?
You see it a lot in China, and again, you see it in about 50% of the cases from a closed user perspective only.
No, this is for any OTA, right?
Yeah, correct. But it needs to be in a closed user environment. They can't just kill your rate in an open public environment. That goes against your rate parity agreement, if you like your rate parity agreement or not.
They give either a coupon code discount or a slashed rate.
Yeah, and then you have to log in for something, or your cookies need to remember who you are.
So you got a coupon code or something, and you go and put that in.
Yeah, it's as simple as asking you like blue or red, right? And you say blue, and all of a sudden I can discount the hell out of it. The problem comes in when you now want that customer back, Eric, for the second time, and the guy will say, oh, but hang on 1 second, I only paid 100 rupee last time, and now you want 10,000 rupee from me. And you kind of go like, well, the cost of acquisition on the OTA, and that's when you go, all of a sudden you have to explain yourself on behalf of the OTAs. And if you ask me, that's quite ingenious from the OTAs.
Can I maybe comment on that as well? I mean, it's happening also here in Asia a lot, undercutting by OTAs. And a lot of hoteliers are really challenging and battling with the reason why. And I think ultimately it's a very bad thing, because every OTA where it happens is penalizing for the disparity. And whatever you're doing in working on member rate plans, private sales plans, or additional discounting or incentives to drive your visibility up, these kind of structures are actually hurting your ranking in those OTAs and bringing you down. So while you're doing good on one OTA, you're losing your position in another. So ultimately, I think where OTAs start applying those practices, it's very dangerous where it will bring to the market, because I think it will change the whole algorithm, the whole display of the properties who try to be good, but their suppliers try to undercut.
Siva, a question for you. Why isn't every hotel using some form of revenue management system? You've obviously got direct experience of the very high-end, 5-star, let's say, branded chain properties, as well as small independents. So what's missing for more mass adoption? Because I know when I speak to, average people, not in our industry, whether it's at a dinner party or a social gathering, right? And I explain a little bit about hotel tech, and I say, by the way, you think the pricing is just automatic, like the airline systems? It's completely not. It's sometimes only one price update every 2 weeks in some cases. I think what I'm asking is, why is there a barrier to mass RMS adoption? Or are we at the turning point where that's starting to change? What's your perspective, please?
Even now, I think even the large hotels have not fully adopted revenue management systems, right? And most of the systems, or the high-end systems, were all very costly. I think Logic and all came into picture only now, right? A couple of years old. organization who is trying to cater to that mid-segment market. Otherwise, cost, I think, was a prohibition, 1A, and secondly, even integration, right? You take some of the larger revenue management companies, they are all integrated to Opera or some of the larger systems. None of them are integrated to local PMS vendors or cloud guys who are doing across the globe who cater to the mid-segment market. I see that changing now. I see a lot of new players coming in. And Fabian spoke about, having something which is not integrated at all, right? How good a pricing decision it takes, we don't know. But I'm still assuming that whatever it is, it will take a much better pricing decision than a guy doing it manually, right? That might be a game changer, right? Without integration, somebody can actually do a pricing and drive some incremental revenues. And I think cost factor and integration, I think, are the two factors which are the main thing which has stopped. And even understanding, right? There's an educational requirement in the market to understand pricing. Even the large hotels still have not fully adopted revenue management.
And let's face it, if you're still an Excel warrior in the next 5 years, chances are you'll be out of a job, right? And unfortunately, that's a hard truth. I mean, everybody who drives Uber right now, good luck in 5 years' time. I mean, they're launching a new fleet of just standalone buses and cars and everything else already next year here in Singapore, right? So it's technology, the strategic side of things from revenue management, Shiva, what you're talking about, will always require some form of human at the over the next decade. But the analysis, the crunching, the pressing the button, right? That will be done through automatic bots. Easy as having a computer say, switch on the light at 8 o'clock, you say, update my price at 8 a.m. And then switch it off or change it again at 9 a.m. when you see an impulse. So we can't be mistaken that the technology will replace some of the analysis or the analysts as we currently have them.
That's a good thing though, right? If those, let's say, routine decisions, logical decisions can be automated, I think that gives the revenue management the focus and the time to be strategic and look at actually demand generation opportunities and not just reacting to demand. But anyway, we have another question from Salmia. Salmia asks, can my channel manager or CRS connect with an RMS directly and eliminate the need for a PMS? Siva. Who's Salmia? Interesting question. I'll repeat that. Can my channel manager or CRS connect with an RMS directly and eliminate the need for a PMS? I've got a perspective on this.
And Fabian is the RMS, right? So you can take the question.
A true visionary.
Actually, Bas, you want to take this one, or I'll take this one?
Well, I might want to comment to help Siva out here a little bit.
Yes.
But I still believe that we need you, Siva, and PMS systems today. I think from a CRS world, a lot is capable today. I think there's still some functionalities that you would like to do in operations that you need a PMS. But from a technical point, we know already that we can push straight rates from an RMS into a CRS, and from there the distribution goes. But I think to date, we still need to, I would say, hold accountable for what data we're looking at in a system and what kind of user would be applied to what kind of rate, etc. So I think we can't yet go around that. And I hope we still need you longer, Siva, to maintain that product in place.
Fabian, any comments?
Oh yeah, when I looked after Tune Hotels, we didn't have PMSs, right? In all of our 50 properties, we did not have one single PMS. We had an RMS, a channel manager, and a CRS, because all we needed was a check and check out. The information of the guest was directly pulled into a central data warehouse, and that's where it lived. So I used my BI tool from the warehouse to get the information that I needed. Now, that was an extreme case, so to speak. And part of it, excluding you guys, Shiva, and a couple of the new ones, the old PMSs have not been designed for data analytics. They have not been designed for what you actually want to do. They have been designed for, let me get the guest, let's find where the guest here is, let me send them a note, let's do X, let's interface with other stuff, and let's make it the heart of the hotel. That doesn't cut it in the digital world anymore. So you guys are fully in the cloud. You are, I saw that you recently gave a new mobile app kind of thing for your PMS. Now, all of those items are necessary so that you can provide an insight to the guest that somebody doesn't need a secondary system. Because if your property is small enough and you get 100% through your channel manager, you could argue, why do I need a PMS? But big boxes, you won't be able to do that. In a big box hotel, you will not be able, even if you're looking 50, 60, 70 rooms, at this point in time in the foreseeable future, you need a PMS, and guaranteed that PMS will evolve into something more than just a check-in, check-out. Or, Shiva, we're really going to say you're going to be a check-in, check-out box in 5 years' time.
I have obviously an opinion and a perspective here, and I think one way that, let's say, one perspective I have on this is that in 5 years' time, if we gather again today, in 5 years and have a webinar, I honestly believe we will have a conversation like, guys, remember we used to talk about PMS and CRS and RMS and GDS and whatever, and now it's just HMS, Hotel Management System. Now, that doesn't mean that a single supplier will do everything, because we know, we've seen so many times that there is no one-stop shop that offers best-in-class across every single solution. That's obvious. However, from a user perspective, the usability, whether it's a PMS origin product that's evolved to integrate, like, for example, Hotelogix. A Hotelogix user today can plug in RMS, can plug in CRS, and from a user's perspective, they have real-time price decision intelligence. They click a button and all their prices are distributed. So Hotelogix users today, whilst we may define Hotelogix as a PMS, are already managing a lot of their distribution and pricing from that, let's say, Hotelogix interface. So what this is talking about is intelligent integrations, open APIs, and suppliers in these areas, let's call them RMS, CRS, PMS, suppliers who have the agility and the flexibility to integrate intelligently where it makes sense. Yeah, and I think historically, without naming brands or without naming products, there are products out there who absolutely, let's say, are failing in terms of being open to integrations, or they charge a bomb to integrate. That's my perspective. But guys, we now have 2 minutes before we reach the 60-minute mark of the presentation. My battery looks like it's about to die too. Any final thoughts, any final comments, please, to wrap up?
I think as a PMS vendor, what we think is that the market, when we see the market, we are seeing that there's a requirement coming from everybody, right, to how to price better. And that seems to be the common question now. Unlike a few years back, I used to sell PMS 10 years back. I'm selling a PMS now. So if somebody told me about a bar 10 years back, I would have thought it is a place to drink, right? I didn't know what it was. So, yeah. But that has totally changed, and the requirement. So we are a cloud service provider, and in Europe and US, I don't see anybody buying a property management system which is not on cloud. And secondly, which is not integrated to the channel manager. And I think in a couple of years, they will all tell that we want a pricing integration also. And if you are not integrated, I don't see a PMS selling at all.
Thank you, Shiva. We have 1 minute. Any final thoughts, Fabian?
Well, to comment on Fabian's ideas, I definitely think that the technology is becoming a huge impact on revenue managers for tomorrow. Of course, I hope still that we still have a job, so that Excel will still somewhere be of adaptation. But absolutely, we're going into a fast pace. We see the booking window getting shorter, and technologies, mobile phones, becoming so important that we're changing the vibe that we as humans can no longer keep up. So yeah, technology is there to win, and we need to work with them.
Fantastic. Fabian, final thoughts?
I think coming back, if you want to have a calculated approach toward pricing your rooms better, you do require technology. at the end of the day, or somebody using that technology. And I think I speak for all of us here. If you have any questions or you want a free look at how am I pricing and positioning at the moment, just give us a call and we have a look for you. And then we'll take the conversation forward to give you what you need, because not everything fits everybody.
Fantastic. Well, on behalf of Hotelogix, HMS Thailand, Logic, and Vertical Booking, this is Eric signing off for now. Let's do this again. I enjoyed it. Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.